Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kate Scott. I'm the Managing Director for the Carolinas chapter of CMAA. Thank you for joining us today for this expert webinar, Inside Optimization Tech Transformation at CCNC, one of our outstanding member clubs. We are excited to welcome our guest speakers, Tanner Steiner, head golf professional at CCNC, and Bodo Sieber, CEO of Tag Marshall, one of our longtime and valued bronze partners. Over the next hour, they will share how the club has leveraged technology to optimize golf operations through strategies like variable goals, member communication, reporting, and turf protection, ultimately improving operational efficiency, protecting the golf course, and delivering an exceptional member experience. With that, I would like to turn it over to Bodo and Tanner. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks for the kind introduction. Thanks for making some time, and and also thanks for all the good work that you do in the Carolinas area, and how kind you guys always are to our team when we come to your events. So
It's
really
our
appreciate.
pleasure.
Over to the expert, Tanner. It's so good to have you. Thank you so much for joining. I'd love for you to do a quick introduction on both your course and also yourself and how you got to be the head golf pro at the Country Club of North Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thank you for having me, and Kate, thank you for the kind introduction. My name is Tanner Steiner. I'm the head golf professional at CCNC. I've been here for 10 years now. I started out at CCNC as an intern through the PGM programs, quickly worked up to assistant, first assistant, and I've been in the head pro role now here for about 5 years. A little bit about CCNC, if you're not aware, we're located in Pinehurst, North Carolina. We're a 36-hole private facility. And we kind of do a lot of different things as far as hosting events. So we have a lot of amateur events that we host on a national stage. We've hosted 3 USGA events since our founding. First one being in 1980 with the US Amateur. 2010 we had the Girls Junior. 2021 we had the Boys Junior. And then in 2030 we're scheduled to host the Senior Amateur, and 2037 the Women's Amateur. On top of that, we've hosted a number of other small events, anything from the Carolinas PGA events, CGA events, and we're scheduled to host our 8th Southern Amateur next year in 2027. So definitely a golf-focused club, a lot of golf-focused members, a lot of high IQ golf members here. We have about a total of 1,000 to 1,100 members, anywhere from local to national and everywhere in between. So good range of members. Very golf-focused club for sure, and great place to be.
Brilliant. Not the worst place if you love your golf to be in Pinehurst. And
Exactly.
we were chatting as we got online earlier, because we met earlier in the week to have a walkthrough and to talk about the content. And Tanner just told us that he had a casual round at Pinehurst number 10 after we spoke. And he shot a fantastic score. So that's not bad. All in a week's work. You certainly do a lot of golf, and you have an amazing property. 36 holes of prime Pinehurst golf real estate. And we're excited to learn more about what is important to your members and how you make sure that you always stay ahead of the game when it comes to their experience and your operational efficiencies. If you'll allow me just a quick introduction to Tag Marshall. We have been in the business now for 11 years. So Tanner, you said you've been at the club for 10. So I also started as an intern, as a co-founder of the company. Young and very green, and it's been a fantastic journey for us, and we're very blessed to work with more than 50 of the top 100 golf courses. And many of you would have watched the US Open at Shinnecock. That's one of our partners, and all the way from Pebble Beach, Pinehurst, to Royal Portrush, the Old Course at St Andrews. It's really amazing who's who when it comes to the caliber of partners we have. But the majority of our clubs are just down the middle, good private clubs, or that $60, $80 Greenview golf course. And the other big teacher, other than the many pros that we work with and have built good relationships with and listen very closely what they need from us, is obviously data. And yeah, I want to do a bit of a reveal here. We have tracked 95 million rounds of golf, which obviously is fantastic from a data learning standpoint. If you think what you can do with AI and machine learning with so much information. And yeah, now is actually the time, and I don't know if you can see this, but we've just switched this over to 100 million because the season has had a strong start. And so now this is going to be on our masthead, 100 million rounds of golf tracked, and that comes with 100 billion data points because every single round has many, many data points. And obviously, at some point, hopefully, we will get to serve 1,000 golf courses. We also work with some of the tours, the DP World Tour, among them for a few years. They used to be called European Tour, which was an easier name to locate. And we've also done, and you mentioned some of the amazing events you have hosted at your club. We've done quite a few of the USGA and RNA amateur events over the years, and just from a field and pace and tournament management tracking point of view. And that's another learning area for us. So all in all, we're about data and we're about bringing efficiencies, improve play experiences, and also wherever possible, capacity gains, right? Because golf has had amazing tailwinds, and there's an over demand right now, and we want to make sure that golfers get as much golf in as possible. All right, but back to you, Tanner. Much more important. You have obviously stewarded many, many rounds now at the club, and also. I know one of the issues in golf very often is that you don't get to play enough golf, but I'm sure that you have had many, many rounds over the years. What would you say also when it comes to what your members are asking of you and potentially their guests are the top three things that you need to get right for them? Like, what would they say? That's what we need from you
Yeah.
as
Yeah, so basically the feedback I get pretty often is probably pace of play and flow of play would be the number one. Course conditioning, strong number two. And then I'd say it's kind of a tie for number three, anything from playing partners to accessibility. So as a lot of clubs have gotten busier since the next golf boom that we've had since COVID, accessibility is becoming more and more of a top priority. But those are probably the top three that I have right there.
Yeah. And you're right on here with what the players are saying, and it's a broader industry survey. So course conditioning, as we said, is always a key experience factor. Number two, just a few percentage points off, is playing partners, right? Who's in my group, and that also speaks to accessibility in a way. And then third, at 74% of players saying pace and flow of play is critical to their experience. So they really want us to pay attention to that. It's interesting because obviously there's many ways in which you can try and solve the problem. Traditionally, golf has had lots of labor-intensive processes around it. Remind me quickly what your first introduction was to the tag marshal technology, because I think it's quite a nice story.
Yeah. So another quick thing about me. So my wife is also a golf professional, and for a while she was the head professional of Pinehurst Country Club. So obviously Pinehurst is a big partner for you guys. So she was very familiar with Tag Marshall, worked with it every day. And kind of by osmosis, I was introduced to it. There's always work on our computers at home as well, so we never kind of leave the job. So Tag Marshall was always up, so I had a pretty good idea of the system and how it worked before we even talked to you guys, and that's kind of how I brought it to CCNC, just from learning how to use it through her.
Nice. So she could check in on the course from home,
Yep.
bring her work home with you, and he's like, that's kind of, I want to do that too.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, we want Tanner to work all the time. But we know that Pinus have been amazing partners to us and continue to be that. They really also push the boundaries when it comes to what other data sources can we pull and overlay, and finding the sweet spots of setup, green speed, what do we do if the wind is this versus that? They really have made it a bit of a petri dish in terms of finding optimal solutions, and we're very fortunate to be part of that. But yeah, the pace obviously is critical, and they've identified that, as have you, as have many, many golfers. And the USGA also has done research here, interestingly enough, with the University of Wisconsin Stout. They have a golf program. And funny enough, they have, as part of the golf program, they have a tag marshal kit that the students go take to the local course to experiment with and learn about and track data with, right? But the research that was done at a number of US golf facilities through the range, all the way from busy munis, daily fee, private, high-end resorts. Everything was represented, and also nationwide, quite a few courses got in-depth analysis done, and then many, many thousands of players were quizzed. And what they tried to find out was how many touch points are part of a player experience, and then also where do they rank? Which ones are the most important, and which ones are the most difficult ones to get right, or rather, which ones delight our players and which ones frustrate our players the most, right? So that we know what to focus on. And what they found is that out of 1,000 touch points, and think about it, even booking around, loading your clubs in the trunk, all of these had touch points related to your golf experience, driving through the gate, getting greeted in the clubhouse, all of these things are little touch points. So you get to 1,000 quite quickly. But the worst performing ones in terms of frustration is corrective pace of play action. And this is research speak for, hey, you're slow, get on with it, right? That is that negative interaction. And then other people's speed. So if other people are not, or I perceive that other people are holding me up, this is the pace of play conundrum ultimately, right? So those are the worst offenders, if you will. And then on the flip side, positive player assistant and ranger etiquette is the highest ranking delight factor. It's such a simple thing to do well. And it ranks even higher in terms of what it does to their delight than fantastic conditioning, which we all know you put so much effort into, right? And then somewhere in the top 10 is also information provided about pace. So the learning here, just takeaway is that, yeah, it is a very polar in terms of experience. If you do it well, it's expected. If it doesn't work well, it overshadows everything else. So just taking a step back for you at the club, yeah, and obviously you've been around. Yeah, how was this topic approached historically, and when did you decide to really lean into it and find a new way of working with it?
Yeah, so we've always, as most clubs have, taken pace of play very seriously. And we've actually, in my head, I think we were pretty on the right path as far as policy was concerned. We had a more flow-focused policy versus pace, which at a lot of private clubs, I think is almost more important, where you'll perceive, a member will call you and say, hey, it's very slow out here. We need to get somebody out here. And you go out and they're playing in 3.5 hours. Well, it might not be slow for them. Perception is reality, right? So we always had a flow-focused mindset, and we've recently adapted a pace mindset as well to actually put in physical numbers of, hey, you need to play this course in this amount of time and this course in that amount of time. And being able to do that, we didn't really have an objective way to capture as many rounds as we needed. So what you were having was a lot of not necessarily complaints, but you'd have situations where you'd put your rangers in, which in my case is all of our golf professionals. We're the only ones that ranger here, where you'd be putting them in a position where they'd be confronting members without objective data, which, as a lot of you guys know on this call, that's just not a good place to put your staff in at all. So having an objective data set is huge, and we needed something. And obviously, Tag Marshall does that, and we've recognized that and kind of adopted you guys.
Yeah, look, that journey is quite familiar to us, right? And interestingly enough, a lot of courses are they're wanting to just show competency around this, right? And it doesn't have to be a case of we have a major pace of play problem. No, like we just really want to do this well, and we want to make sure that our team has the toolkit to be successful. And as you're saying, pace is one of those objective things, and some courses have a fast play problem, right?
Yeah.
There may be, yeah, just a very quick foursome that knows the course very well, pushing into a group ahead, and their perception is they're slow, and now they're feeling upset. Well, that group in front might actually be compliant, but how do you know? And then who do you talk to, and how do you do it, right? So again, taking a step back, one of the very early things that we learned here is that you need to position your messaging well, right? And that is where corrective pace of play action, like I joked earlier, it's get on with it, you're slow. Like this happens all the time at golf courses, and this is where players get very defensive. So what we've learned is one way to position the messaging is to say, hey, you're currently out of position, help us get back in position. And that might be 5 minutes, or it might be half a hole, right? So
Right.
then you're quantifying it, and then it's just a message that's a temporary situation. Like you're currently out of position. Hey, do us a favor, help us get back in position. And the golfer will compute that, and generally they want to be compliant, right? Whereas if I say you're slow, now I'm judging their character almost as a player,
Right.
right? Because we all
Right.
know golf needs to be, what's the saying? Jay Curran said that recently, the NCAA CEO, you have to be good, fast, or funny, right? As a
It's a good way to
player.
put it.
Um, and nobody wants to be called slow, right? So having objective data, knowing who to talk to, and then being able to quantify it, and then positioning the message as, "Hey, you can help us fix this very quickly," is works well. Yeah, another company that we work with is Players First, and they do a lot of post-round sentiment surveys, right? And especially in private clubs, they get 48% or so response rates, which is a lot. They've got a lot of data. They're actually an official partner to the National Golf Foundation because they literally have millions of data sets coming in every season. And they're now big enough to show net promoter score trends and trends along the industry and also in different segments of the industry. So, because once you have the data, you can obviously analyze. And what they said, like, look, a few things you need to just do right if you're running a golf operation, and these are the things that always float to the top. Players want to feel welcome, where already you have really good staff and good processes around making people feel welcome, and that is personalized service, right? They want a good flow on the golf course, and again, you already spoke about the difference between flow and pace, right? Flow feels like things are moving well. And sometimes if things took 10 minutes longer than they were expected to, but they've moved, that's okay. We can live with that. And also at one course, 5 hours is the best time you'll ever have. And one of those courses is Erin Hills. It's just incredibly hard to play, and you got to walk it. Whereas another course, 4 hours is slow, right? So the flow versus pace is certainly an experience factor. And then meet on-course staff is important, right? Because I'm out there for 4 hours, 3.5 hours, 4.5 hours, depending on how long the course is. I want to feel like looked after and that there's competency around my experience, and also the time it takes me to play. So if you do these things well, as very simple here, tick the boxes. Restaurant visits go up. That's always important, daily fee, but also there's just more time post round if we don't play half an hour over. And the key item, and that is something that Pinehurst really track, for instance, the net promoter score shoots up. Like that is how likely are you to recommend this golf course in this case? Could be bank, could be airline, could be service to your friends and family out of 10. 0 being never, worst thing ever, 10 is being amazing, excellent. And if we don't do this well, it like crashes, right? People don't want to come back and they won't say good things. So, um, uh, yeah, it's easier said than done. How are you guys thinking about the on-course staff and having that engagement on the golf course? Because yeah, you don't have a team of 1,000 people available, right? You're not the Pinehurst. How do you make sure that you hit the buttons in terms of people want to feel welcome? You need to engage them in the clubhouse in that environment, but also somebody needs to be out there and check in with players on the golf course.
Right. So again, kind of just jumping back. So before we had Tag Marshall, and you guys will see in a couple more slides here the layout of our golf courses, and it's a pretty big property. So at any given time, we may have 4 golf professionals on the golf course monitoring play, which as you know, we get deeper into the world and payroll costs continue to rise. That's not really a practical solution to do things. So being able to actually see where we're at and have the right staff on the right course at the right time makes a big difference. If you start to see a group slowing down, being able to be there, making it more of a positive interaction with both groups, because at the end of the day, even if a group is behind, you want to make sure you have a positive reaction with that group, and you don't want to necessarily just go out there and be the bad guy. If you can frame it in a way and make it a positive experience for everybody, whether it be of one group that's really fast behind a slower group, you let them play through and just frame it as, you guys will have a much better time without having these guys, on your tail the entire time. And if you can get the right people out there at the right time, that makes a huge difference versus just blindly wandering around hoping that you hit an issue at the right time. So just knowing where people are at makes a huge, huge difference of how my staff can meet different people out on the golf course.
Yeah, that's great. And just having the accuracy around that, knowing where to be at the right time, I think will make a lot of sense once you, as our guest here, see the expanse of the courses. Yeah, but technology is obviously is here to help, and for us, we do our job. We feel if you can be more efficient, and if we can save you money, and if we can help you also elevate revenue where possible, right? So just from a system point of view, the Tag Marshal suite has GPS options, which is your more traditional. Hey, there's a screen in your golf cart that shows you yeah, all sorts of golfer-facing front-end value, and then we can have a hidden away tracker because a screen is not appropriate for all golf courses. Especially we're seeing that in the private club space. A lot of times, a club will start out and saying, "We just want to know where everyone is," right? So we can manage things well, and the players know the course well enough. We don't need to put a screen in front of them with yardage. So this is that. And then, of course, we also want to track walkers, right? Because walking golf and sometimes caddy golf is a beautiful way to play. And then the latest in our suite is what we call wind tag, which is actually a little wind meter that measures wind on the flag stick. And it answers 2 questions and sends that information straight onto the screen. How far to the pin and what's the wind doing, right? So players will make more birdies, right? So this is quite a neat toolkit, but all of what these sensors do is send data to our platform, which we're going to look at just now. There's sort of this live control center, and then there's a lot of back-end data to help you make better decisions and also really understand how you're performing, and all the way from hole-by-hole runtime to individual days or periods. And you can never learn enough and know enough about you, what drives your business, right?
Right.
So in your case, Tanner, you have, yeah, tell us about the system that you have deployed and also what type of cards you guys use.
Sure. So we use a club card, just the tempos, for our fleet. We have 125 carts in our fleet, so a pretty big fleet. But we have the classic cart tags and the walking tags as well. Every single cart has a classic install, and we have about 15 walking tags that we use. For the walking tags, we don't necessarily hand them out to every group. There's usually a good mix of carts in groups with walkers. So at least if we have an idea of where everybody's at, that gives us a pretty good indication of where all of our groups are.
Great. You want that line of sight. And here you're getting an idea, right? So you have the dogwood and the cardinal course, yeah, in highly wooded area. We saw some of the photos. It looks absolutely amazing. But
Yeah.
from a management point of view, yeah, some courses have got a level of elevation, or you can see 3 or 4 holes out, or there's some junctures where you can see a number of holes converging. You're really so spread out, and there's massive trees in the way.
Yeah.
Give us a bit of a sense of the expanse here. How long would it take you to get from the clubhouse to the far left? What is that hole 9 on?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes.
Cardinal.
On a Cardinal. Yeah. So if you take the roads, which is the fastest way, it could take you up to 20 minutes to get out there by carts that are set at 11, 12 miles an hour. So it is a long way. And like you mentioned too, our courses were designed to basically be cut through the pines or at least around the lake where it feels like you're the only one out there and you're kind of secluded on your own golf hole. So there's not a whole lot of line of sight where you can see four, five, six holes at one given point. So before Tag Marshall, there was a lot of meandering, if you will. It's blindly wandering around, seeing if you could find a pace of play issue and just talking to groups to make sure their day was going okay. But now you can basically find an issue, drive straight to that issue, and solve it. Hopefully, before the groups behind start to notice that there is even an issue. That's kind of the goal, and Tag Marshall's been really helpful in making that happen.
Yeah, I think that is such a classic golf experience that you can actually create, right, with this design, and that you're the only ones, right?
Yeah.
And if things work well, and if they manage well, then this is how it is for 4 hours. Like you're the only group,
Yeah.
and that's I'm sure that's worth a lot to your members. But obviously, this line of sight is only one side of the coin. Like it needs to make sense. Like you really need to know what's going on the course at a glance. And this is where we run a number of algorithms that make sense of the field. So here's a full course view. This is sort of a zoom in. But two questions for you, Tanner. One is who have you got dialed in? Who's looking at the that back end information? And then also, just explain the colors briefly for those in the audience that are not familiar.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with the last question first. So the color. So purple is your delayers, the groups that's potentially holding up the groups behind. Orange are the ones that are delayed. So they're playing on pace. They're just basically waiting on every single shot, or at least some shots. Red is slow. So in honestly, a lot of my operation, I don't necessarily harp on the players in red. If you're playing slow and you're not holding anybody up, then enjoy it. You pay your dues, so have fun out there. And your green, those are the ones that make my life easy. So they're right on pace. They're not holding anybody up. They're not playing slow. They're kind of where they need to be. Um, but basically, as far as monitoring goes, we have our starters on both Cardinal and Dogwood have laptops where they're monitoring it. Especially on Dogwood, if we have a group that wants to play 9 holes, it's kind of a more traditional setup where 1 and 10 are right beside each other, so you can get folks out on 1 and 10. So if they need to know if someone's on 9, they can just look at their laptop real quick and make a decision that way. And then my staff, it's basically on every single computer we have in the golf shop. So everybody's looking at it on the golf side of where potentially people need to go, especially, in our busy season, April, May. We
Mhm.
have guys looking at it all the time of saying, this could be an issue. I'm going to get out there first. One thing that we have learned from doing this is we need to be out there earlier than we think we ever needed to. So in years past, we'd go to wait till they're on 4, 5, 6. But you can start to see issues coming out on hole 2 or hole 3. And if you can get ahead of those, that's really easy. And then the last group of people that use it more than anybody, and I'm very glad they do, is our superintendent staff. It's kind of their goal to be out of the way and not really be seen by our members and their guests when they're out here so they can find gaps in the golf course of where they can get some work done and where they have time to get work done without being seen or without being in the way. So that's been very helpful for them as well.
Yeah, brilliant. And I know that there's other use cases for them, which we'll dig into. But yeah, one of the things that's important as well, and again for us, we're believers in APIs, right, where we can share data with other systems because we believe that you as an operator should have a choice of getting what is best for you and then make those systems work and talk together as best as possible. So in this case, we have about 20 or so T-sheet integrations where we're pulling T-sheet data straight into the system. And just tell us a little bit how that works and what some of the use cases are for that for you.
Yeah, so again, it's we integrate with Forties, which has been very helpful for our starter staff. One thing that they've really enjoyed, we're obviously constantly on radios communicating between our staff, but if we add somebody or if a member adds to the T sheet, we don't necessarily have to communicate directly to them. 4Ts and Tag Marshal integrate seamlessly where if they make a tee time on 4Ts, the starter gets the update in their tee sheet that they're looking at. So they can see any adjustments of players that are coming up to them on day of, which has been very helpful in our communication process.
And then let's just look back at the big picture here. So you've got the whole course, and then you know, okay, the group number 28, that's my biggest problem right now. We even make the icon big, so in a second you know. You click on it, and then you see this information, which is okay, they're 10 minutes out. There's a 22-minute gap between them and the group ahead, so that's clearly too much. And then here's the player names, right? So I can imagine that you've got 1,200 members, sure, but you pretty much know the people around the club, and then some of them may have varying attitudes towards being held up, or also how you want to approach them.
Yeah.
Just personalizing, knowing who's out there is probably helpful.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. And kind of hit on it there. I mean, it's funny, but it is something that all of us deal with on a daily basis where depending on who the member is or who they may be playing with, you may handle the situation differently on a day-to-day basis. If you have a member that potentially slow, but they're never slow, but they have a group of guests out there they're trying to impress, you want to handle that a little bit differently versus a group of guys that are just out there messing around that could be playing a little bit faster, or just if it's cart path only um, where our restrictions are a little bit different. You may handle that situation differently on a day where there's nobody out there. So knowing who's in the group, what time they teed off, and the group ahead is very helpful to be able to handle situations independently.
Mm, very good. Okay, let's jump ahead because we spoke about efficiencies and also, and again, like I mean, look at this amazing setup. Um, and yeah, having been to Pinehurst, just also the smells of the forest and that, it's just so immersive.
Yeah.
Really, really amazing. Just a quick question. What's the water situation? Because yeah, there's more and more clubs that are having water restrictions, or there's definitely a sustainability mindfulness around it. What's the situation like with you guys?
Yeah, we're very fortunate. We have a drought going on throughout the Carolinas now, but we're very fortunate where we have a few large lakes that you can probably see from our overhead map that we pull our irrigation water from. So nothing really beats rainfall when it comes to growing grass, but having those two massive lakes really helps us out. So yeah, very fortunate in that regard.
Got you. Um, And the trees almost create their own climate there around Pinehurst, no doubt about it. But
Yeah,
just looking at the efficiency side of things, so one of the things that's we spoke about now is the live management portion, but then there's also what happens post round, right?
yeah,
And if somebody had a conversation, or you want to look at what happened last Saturday, well, you don't have any data
sure.
in a non-technology world, and now you do. So this is what we call a track map. Um, yeah, talk to us a bit about what that tells you and how it helps you guys.
Yeah, so obviously the track map, it kind of breaks down hole by hole, shot by shot, essentially of where a player was and what time they were there, not only compared to their tee time, but just in real time. And that has helped us out quite a few times with a few upset groups that may say, hey, I played in 4.5, 4:45, and then you start looking back at the track map and you say, well, the scores aren't matching up. Here's what this group was at, what time they went, and the truth starts to reveal itself a little bit. So it's been nice to have some objective data. Whereas if we didn't have this, we're taking word for word. So being able to clear up some of the things and resolve some issues before they become issues, the track map has been very vital in that process.
Yeah, and one thing that we see here is interactions. If you log them, as in we've spoken to this group, and we very often see that's helpful. Because if a group, like you're saying, you want to get out there early, has been spoken to in hole three, you would then know about that if you need to have a conversation again later on, or somebody else from the team potentially. And also
Right.
the geofence breach is quite critical. And I think that's probably a good segue to talk about the geofencing and yeah, how that's helping your superintendent, yeah, protect the turf. How's it working for you guys? And
Yeah.
yeah, just give us a bit of insight.
Yeah, so geofencing is brand new for us. We actually recently started geofencing the golf course. Actually, first week of May is when we unveiled it. And it's actually been surprisingly a positive response to it. You always assume the worst when you're unveiling something new, where you're basically telling members no, which is essentially what it is at the grand scheme of things. And the only feedback I've gotten so far is they want me to make these fences wider and make them more restrictive so they don't have people driving, which is refreshing for me to hear. But on the other side, from the management side, it's been helpful to see, and we'll see it as we go. I think it's actually on the next slide with the heat maps that we'll talk about. But we have a lot of signage out there of where carts can and can't go. Like I said, with the classic tags that we have, we don't have the screens. So there's not necessarily a drawn out map the members can see. So we have signage to help that members know where they can and can't go. But with the geofencing, we've seen that you're actually able to not use as much signage, which cleans up the aesthetic of the golf course a little bit. So yeah, it's been overall very, very good and very positively taken so far.
That's great. And yeah, you mentioned car pass only, and obviously there's opportunities to help enforce that where
Mhm.
more often than not, that's a bigger problem at a daily fee course where you just don't know who's out there necessarily, where your members are intrinsically motivated to protect their own golf course, right?
Right. Right.
But sometimes people just not aware, right? So to have a system that helps them and guides them is helpful. And we always know that the most important person at the golf course is the golfer, yes, but the superintendent is
Yeah.
very often the real hero. Tell us a bit about the setup. I mean, the course really investing in top end resources here, and yeah, and how they're making use of some of the data, like the heat map, for instance.
Yeah, so the heat map's been very good. I mean, I think you said it in the beginning of this presentation, but course conditions is obviously something players look at, especially at private clubs, is one of the top things they care about. So for our superintendents to have this data where they can see where carts are actually traveling to, and then that allows them to adjust signage if we still want to do signage to, if this area gets worn out entering fairways or exiting near greens, we can adjust those signs and adjust where we have cart flow go to basically spread that out a little bit so it looks a little bit more natural and it's not wearing on the grass so much and they're not, expending too many resources there. So they use it all the time. And like I said, whenever they have the maps out in front of them, they can find places where they can work where before they weren't able to do that. So it allows them to do a little bit more work on the golf course than they normally would have just by having information of where players are and where they need to be at. So it's been very helpful.
Moving on to the next section, which is using data to gain a deeper course and member understanding.
Sure.
The Analytics Hub, obviously for us, that's a tool that brings all of the data we gather together into one centralized hub. And as you can see, this day in particular, Sunday, June 14, wasn't a hugely busy day at your course, but it's always good to see those purple delayer groups. And obviously you guys got on top of those pretty quickly because there wasn't a big knock-on effect.
Right.
Is this data something that you guys revisit and look at to help you plan as you move through a day?
Yes, yeah, constantly I look at the data, not just from the day of, but also past days. And especially in season, it helps us schedule our staff a little bit better. I think, like I mentioned to Bodo a little bit earlier, that we learned that we need to be on the golf course a little bit sooner than we normally thought we would. So being able to schedule staff at different times to be able to get on the golf course faster than we normally would, that's been a really good insight that we've had. So very, very useful information.
Yeah, fantastic. And via the data, obviously it could be from the live map or the gap time monitor as well. Have you identified certain areas on the course where it's more effective to have staff position just so that they can make sure their interventions are timely and get on top of groups that fall out of position a little quicker?
Yeah, yeah. So one big place that I've put more staff at is we have two halfway houses. So on Cardinal, 9 goes all the way out to our the farthest point of the golf course. So that's kind of its own little atmosphere out there. Whereas Dogwood, it comes back down to where the golf shop is, and that halfway house not only serves dogwood traffic, but also just normal member lunch traffic. So it tends to get a little bit busier. So we've added some things on the golf course to help members order their food ahead of time, get the food to them a little bit more efficiently. That way they're not slowing down at that point and trying to make up time once they get to the 10th tee. So being able to locate that issue and have objective data around it has been able to help us kind of make that area a little bit more efficient than it ever has been.
It's fantastic to hear, and it's exactly how we like to hear our data is being used. So obviously, across the last few months for you guys, we're looking here at January through to May of this year for the Dogwood course in particular. You can obviously start to pick up certain trends. The season's got busier over the last few months, and those are broken down into specific segments of a day, days of the week, the months. You guys obviously run a tight ship. Do you look at this sort of data and pinpoint areas maybe where you can get groups through a little quicker, or where you may need additional on-course staff if times start to run a little longer?
Yeah, most definitely. So as you can see there, 9 to 10 o'clock is a big range that we've run into where we've noticed, hey, we need to put more staff here. Whereas in the past, we'd normally have somebody on the golf course between, 10 and 11 and basically throughout the rest of the day. But being able to see, 9 o'clock, we really need to start getting on these groups and making sure, they're getting around and making it easier for everybody else. So being able to have our staff get out there earlier, kind of know where the issues lie. And then on a group like on Saturdays, where you can see Saturdays in April, obviously are our busiest times. There's a lot of Saturdays where we have more groups than tee times on the tee sheet. So we do 10-minute intervals here. We have them that spaced out on purpose so we can squeeze groups in when we need to. Our goal, like most goals at private clubs, are not to tell members no. We want to do everything we can to accommodate. So if we can get, like I said, our staff on the golf course and get these groups squeezed in and try to make sure everyone's day is going smooth, and as long as people see groups in front of them, they're usually not having an issue. They may play in 405 or 410 or 415, but if they see, hey, there's nowhere to go in front of me, it's a full golf course, it's a beautiful day out, we're in a pretty good spot versus, if it's a Tuesday and it's quiet and you're playing in 410, you could be getting a lot of phone calls. So just knowing where people are at, getting people and trying to say yes as much as possible to members, it's been very useful to have that info and try to make things run as smooth as possible.
Tanner, on the subject of smooth, my Wi-Fi just dropped, and I'm sorry, I was lost there for 2 or 3 minutes, but yeah, all back on track.
Okay. Kieran was flawless. He stepped right in.
Of course, no, I'm making myself redundant here, Tanner. That's the mission. Yeah, so, but I don't know if Ken has mentioned this, but well done to you and the team for really bringing in your January through May rounds exactly on goal time. That's great to see. We're always obviously looking for improvements, right? It's never finished, much like your golf game. You can always get better. And much like also now with your golf game, the more data you have, be that TrackMan or Top Tracer or an app that you might use, the better you can work on yourself. And it's the same having data on your operation. So one of the things that we like to break out is, yeah, what percentage of groups are on pace and delayed versus slow. And I want to just, where this looks lit up like a Christmas tree, but this is really because you have dialed in your goal time at a level that takes effort to achieve, right? Versus if you said, hey guys, let's just play our goal time to 4:15, everything would be green and happy. But then what happens is 4:15 turns into 4:30, right? And 4:30 is when your player is starting to call you. So for you to have such a tight benchmark for yourself and the team means that you always need to put the effort in and keep an eye. And one of the things that helps is, and we saw this now, that the early groups, the first hour of the day, plays more quickly. Just to quantify, here's the 3:38. So you know this now according to data. setting the benchmark for that first hour differently and say we need to play that first hour quicker because then the rest of the day follows more quickly is
Yeah.
a really good strategy. So tell us a little bit how that's working for you guys, and was that a big thing for you to make that call internally as a management team?
Yes, most definitely. As you mentioned, we want to try to keep it as tight as possible. So you could have a group without the variable goal times. Say your goal's 4:05. If a group is your first one out and they're playing in 4:05, you don't see a problem, but they can quickly start to stack. Every 30 seconds matters when you're going through a couple hundred rounds a day. So working with your team and really understanding the variable goal times and why it's important to have a 3:45 or a 3:55 out there at the beginning of the day, it really shows you, hey, this group may be falling behind and they're the leaders on the golf course, so they need to be setting the pace. And if they start to fall behind, you can really start to get on them quickly and address the issues before they start to stack up for the rest of the day. Because as a lot of folks on this call know, if your first group of the day is slow, the rest of the day is going to be pretty long trying to make everybody happy and get them around the golf course. So the earlier you can get on it, the better.
Sure. Yeah, and I think you having the mindfulness, obviously, your responsibility is towards yeah, the 100 people out there, right? And not just the one group. And there's a question that was actually asked by a webinar a guest here. How do you handle twosomes that may complain about pace of play when the course is quite full and they can't play as fast as they would like?
That's a great question. I don't think there's ever a right answer to it. Thankfully, we have a lot of very good members that if they do want to play as a twosome, if they want to play a twosome at 11 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, there's nothing in our rules that says you can't do it. So typically, they're pretty understanding of that. When we can, we try to, introduce people and say, hey, if you guys want to join up, you're welcome to, or just let them know on the golf course. We appreciate you guys' patience. I know it's not the fastest out here, and as long as you're communicating with them and letting them know that you're out there with them, and if they're not understanding about that, then
Sure.
that's a case by case basis, I guess. But just constant communication and letting them know what you're working on is always been helpful to make members happy, I guess you could say.
Great. And maybe taking a step back, so the geofencing and this setup has some commonality in that you can set the days and you can
Mhm.
set the times, right? So you
Yep.
could say, because we know the course flows slightly differently on our busiest days, which might be Friday, Saturday, we have these benchmarks. And then on another day of the week, we have different benchmarks. And another course might say, Wednesday's our ladies' day, or Tuesday's our members only day, right? So members will generally pay quicker. Some semi-private clubs will say we allow open play guests after 11 a.m. So they can then adjust the goal times and potentially also the intervals to really accommodate the type of players that's out there. And it's not like what we used to have to do is sort of a one size fits all and then hoping that it works out. But
Right.
you can really get segmented and then also yeah allocate the right types of players to the right sections of the day with the right expectations.
Right.
And again, yeah, analyzing data, you can see that you have a fair amount of fast play, right? There's 40 minutes and or 30 minutes quicker than goal time, on goal time within 10 minutes. So you're within 10, 15 minutes is practically um, yeah, yes, that's 70% of your play, and this is because you are holding yourselves against really really tight standards. And I again want to applaud you for doing that because it's so easy to stretch it upward and say, hey, we'll give ourselves 5 more minutes and things won't be so red.
Yeah.
But this is why you're good and why you're getting the results. And that's great to see. And one of the things that we also want to understand is was our original assumptions how the course should play on a whole by whole basis, how good were we, right? Was that correct? And sometimes we get surprises.
Yeah.
How did you go about figuring that out and setting up the expected whole by whole times initially, and what did the data then teach you?
Yeah, so we kind of just did a basic breakdown, 4 hours divided by 18 and try to break down par fours are going to play in the middle, par threes a little faster, par fives a little longer. And what we quickly learned when you can see on those targeted goal times, that's not necessarily the case. We talked about it the other day, but for example, holes one and two of Dogwood, they're both par fours. They're both, not overly long. They're both not overly difficult, but you see the target on hole number one versus hole number two is 5 minutes longer. There's not a bottleneck there. I'm not entirely sure of why that is. The second hole is arguably harder than the first hole, so I don't really know why, but having the data to see, what that is, it kind of makes a big difference versus if you went every par four is going to be 15 minutes, you're not going to get accurate data.
True.
So yeah, just going through and actually looking at real time has been very useful to see where a group is and where they should be, based on the data we've collected.
Nice. And yeah, you can really and you need to really dial that in. That's one thing. So the whole by whole goal times get set. And another thing that's important is the turn time, right, at the halfway house. Because people may have different expectations here, and you need to set standards around this. And then sometimes, yeah, you can also manage holes by having, yeah, certain setups, right? Like if a hole is plays over time, sometimes you need to make the hole before that a little bit more difficult,
Yeah.
right? So you can free up time for the group ahead, yeah, making it through a difficult hole. And we've just had a partner of ours realize that on a fairly simple hole, that they're losing 5 to 7 minutes versus the expectation. They realized the rough, they've got a fairly substantial rough on the right side of the fairway, and a lot of people just end up in there, right? So now they've
Yeah.
reduced their rough by 25 yards, and they're speeding things up by 5 minutes, and they never would have known. Because you're not out there all the time, you don't have eyes on it all the time without the data, and very often it's simple things like that, and the accumulation of it brings a lot of incremental improvement. 1 minute here, 30 seconds there, 2 minutes here, all adds
Yeah.
up in the end. Yeah, one other thing to consider, and again, we're fortunate to have really good integration partners like Forties, is that we can build profiles on players, right? We've obviously covered up the player names here. We don't want to yeah, embarrass anyone, but we can see what's the average round time, and there's a big difference here. If somebody's playing 4 rounds and they're always or average 322, and somebody's playing 3 rounds, they average 428, right? That's an hour
Right.
difference. Um, and then we can go look at individuals and how did they go, do they go on certain days of the week, and how are they with other players together? Are they more often an offender, or can you trust them with your early tee times? Is that something that you started to look at here or there? I mean, you know your members, but also it's 1,200 of them, right? So
Right.
just talk a little bit to that.
Yeah, yeah. So we use it a little bit here and there. Like you said, with being a private club and you see a lot of the same faces, you pretty much know where your issues can and can't be, who you need to look out for when they're on the tee sheet. But having, like I said earlier, having objective data so you can make it not emotional and you can make it as black and white as possible has been very, very useful.
Yeah.
It puts us in a better position as staff. It puts your committees in a better position if they need to address somebody individually. They're giving them black and white data versus saying, "Hey, we know you're slow. Everyone thinks you're slow." Or this day you played longer, but in the past 5 rounds before that you played in well under four. What happened during this round? That way you have a little bit more data to back yourself up on, and that way you're not making it personal. You're just making it as, like I said, as black and white as possible. I
Sure.
think people respond to that a lot better than everything just being subjective.
Yeah, I think ultimately your goal is to create experiences and memories, right? I mean, that's where golf is so great.
Yeah.
And I know many managers they use this as a training or an educational opportunity. They might then say, "Hey, look, guys, we would prefer if you don't take the first 2 hours of the day on a Saturday, because historically this is what happened. If you would like to, why don't we do a lesson and we'll help you course manage a bit better because the track map tells me that you get stuck on this hole and that hole."
Yeah.
Um, and And then you have data you can actually help the players be better,
Mm.
rather than just no, you're slow, we're not giving you the early tee times, which makes members very upset, right?
Yeah.
And on the topic of members, because they are the key to your success, and ultimately what they say goes. What has been their response to the technology and the different way of working?
Yeah, I think overwhelmingly it's been positive. Like I said, we moved to the geofencing a little over a month ago, and that got a much more positive response than I was expecting, which was very nice. But just the GPS and the pace of play technology, I see it as a win where we're getting less and less phone calls of, hey, it's slow out here, you need to send somebody out. If they're having to do that less, that means it's on their mind less, and that's creating a better experience for them where things just tend to work out on their end. Meanwhile, we're running around behind the scenes making sure things work out. So I think overall, it's been a very enjoyable experience on the member end, and much more efficient on our end as well.
Brilliant. And then ultimately, I'd imagine because a lot of your members aren't on site all the time, but they look forward to coming back. If you can send out information and newsletters around your performance around pace, that would make them feel even better about their membership, right? And if you can say, hey, this season, this is what we've done, and you've helped us achieve that,
Yeah.
that becomes a talking point very often too. Where at another club that doesn't have data, where perception becomes reality, the talking points, oh, it's always so slow. And
Right.
and a manager recently told me, like, if a player thinks a round is slow, they also think the beer isn't cold enough,
Right.
and uh, and the greens aren't fast enough, and everything sort of deteriorates. Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for this very insightful session. We really appreciate your time. I want to just encourage, if any of you have a last question, we've got 2 or 3 minutes. You can type it in the Q&A. Or if you're interested in getting a PDR credit, we have 3 or so online sessions that you can log in at any time. They're between about 45 minutes long or so, and you can learn a bit more, and you get a PDR credit against it. I'm not seeing any questions come through. Yeah, and then as much as you're relying on your team to provide the best service and really make sure that your facility shines, it's the same for us here. Like the partners that are building this business with me, we can't do it without our people. And I just want to highlight Joey Walters, who's out there, our GM from Atlanta, from our Atlanta setup, touching a lot of our customers and dialing them in, making sure that things really work. And then Jared, who's our local sales rep in the Carolinas, I know that he loves obviously popping around Pinehurst, and he would always go and see you and make sure that things work. And then David, who's up in Augusta and Charleston, pulling a lot of the strings for us. So thank you, gents. You must have met quite a few of from our team now in the since you got started.
Yeah, yeah, and I just want to take 2 seconds and just congratulate you. You have built a fantastic team. Everyone's very responsive, and really, really good customer service all around the board. So we all on this call know how hard that is to achieve. So congratulations to you. You've done a great job.
No, thank you. It means a lot. Really appreciate that.
Yeah,
I hope to pop in when I'm next in the area and get a better sense of what it's really like at the course
yeah,
for you guys. And you must enjoy the rest of the season, and hopefully lots of rainfall to make life a bit easier for your supers.
yeah. They would love that. So, well, thank you again for having me on. I appreciate it, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk.
Thanks, you did a fantastic job. Thanks, Tanner, and all the best.